If I asked you to, open your kitchen pantry right now and take a look inside, what would we actually see?
Hmm.
Maybe a few tins of tuna, a bag of rice, maybe some cans of soup from when you had that bad cold back in January?
Right, the emergency soup.
Exactly. For most of us, having a little food reserve is either a forgotten chore or, just a handy way to avoid a grocery run on a rainy Tuesday.
Sure.
But imagine that simple act stocking canned goods is now an official, top-level, national strategic defense priority.
It sounds a bit like a movie plot.
It does, but that is exactly what's happening in Germany right now. The seemingly mundane has become a cornerstone of modern geopolitical strategy.
Just huge shift.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into Germany's new readiness doctrine. And our analysis is built entirely on recent official guidance and reporting coming, directly out of the German government.
Specifically from the Federal Office of Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance, which is known by its German acronym, the BBK. And our mission today is critical. We're not just going to summarize headlines. We want to extract the why, the when, and the how much of this really fundamental policy shift.
Okay.
We need to define how stocking flour and canned vegetables connects to the much bigger picture of European security, geopolitical risk, and state-level crisis management.
Especially for a country like Germany.
Exactly. For a nation that has deliberately fostered this post-war identity focused on, global cooperation and demilitarization, this policy change is, well, it's seismic.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the fact that a major European power has to issue this kind of guidance, it signals a profound, almost sobering shift in their whole national perspective.
It does.
We need to start with that fundamental change. What exactly sparked this, and what is the new official view on risk?
Well, the change is rooted in a kind of brutal realism, and it's explicitly spelled out by the BBK in their latest civil defense guide. They've moved way past euphemisms.
Okay.
The critical defining statement is that today, war is no longer a distant possibility.
Wow. That is heavy.
It is. That single line completely rewrites the security narrative that has dominated German politics and, public life since reunification.
The decades.
For decades, the priority was recovery, stabilization, non-aggression. Civil defense was, frankly, it was viewed as a relic of the Cold War.
Something you just kept on the books.
Exactly. A symbolic necessity, maybe, but not a contemporary reality. Now, the state is openly telling its citizens they have to prepare for a scenario that was, previously considered unthinkable.
That immediately takes the discussion out of the realm of, like, a bad storm or a power outage.
Right.
And puts it firmly into defense and high-level strategy.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the direct and unavoidable geopolitical driver is the profound rise in tension across Europe.
Stemming from the Russia-Ukraine war.
Primarily, yes. German intelligence, their politicians, they are now working with the assumption that the threats around them are geographically and chronologically closer than they have been in a generation.
So this is about adapting the entire system.
The entire civil defense architecture, yeah, to account for worst-case scenarios that can no longer be dismissed as just, historical anecdotes.
So this is officially moving beyond some advisory just-in-case plan and becoming integrated state-level policy. It sounds like managing food reserves is now seen as a crucial pillar of national resilience.
Precisely. And while the primary geopolitical threat is the catalyst, it's really vital to clarify that this food stocking mandate isn't solely about preparing for armed conflict.
Okay, so what else?
The BBK views this as a comprehensive infrastructure policy. It's designed to keep society standing against a whole range of modern shocks. Think about the vulnerabilities we face today. It's not just missiles, it's systemic breakdowns. So this policy is equally designed to address, say, catastrophic natural disasters, sudden energy cutoffs,
Which could last for a while.
a long while, or sophisticated state-sponsored cyber attacks that cripple essential utilities and just fundamental supply chain disruptions. The kind that leaves supermarket shelves empty not because of panic buying, but because the trucks just aren't moving.
So stockpiling food and water, then, it acts as the ultimate low-tech buffer.
Yes.
It provides crucial time for the government and emergency services to mobilize and stabilize things after a major systemic shock.
You've got it.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because this isn't just a unique German neurosis, right? We're not talking about some fringe policy the rest of the continent is ignoring.
No, not at all.
So given these multifaceted threats, from kinetic war to cyberattacks, is this purely a German reaction, or are we seeing this preparedness culture pop up across the continent.
That's a crucial distinction. We are seeing a pan-European sort of reawakening of civil defense. Sweden, for example, they updated their If Crisis or War Comes booklet years ago.
I remember that.
And of course, Switzerland has long-standing traditions of civil readiness, but the European Union itself, as a body, encourages a general culture of preparedness across all its member states.
So there's a baseline.
There is. And crucially, the EU specifically advises citizens to maintain a basic 72-hour stock for any general crisis.
A 72-hour buffer. So 3 days. That allows time for initial emergency response to get organized.
Exactly. So Germany is participating in this broader trend toward individual resilience, but it's enhancing the standard significantly.
How so?
The German BBK's ideal recommendation is for 7 to 10 days of provisions.
Wow, 10 days.
10 days. They are recognizing that in a modern, complex crisis, especially one involving prolonged infrastructure damage, 72 hours simply might not be enough time to establish stability. The German government is asking for 3 times the resilience level recommended by the EU.
Which reflects a much higher perception of systemic risk.
A much higher perception, yes.
That makes sense. They're planning for deeper, more complex failures. If we look back at the history of this advice, because this didn't just appear out of nowhere, when did this stop being symbolic and start becoming real, politically charged policy?
As we mentioned, this advice definitely existed during the Cold War. It included guidance on food, water, shelter. But after 1990, it largely faded. It was seen as either symbolic foresight or just an obsolete security model.
But we did see a moment in the modern era where the idea was reintroduced, and it did not go well. Let's talk about that 2016 hiccup.
Yes, the 2016 Government Defense Report. That was the first time in the post-Cold War era that the government advised citizens to stock basic food and water.
And it was met with immediate, widespread ridicule.
It was.
Why? Why the ridicule? Was it just a knee-jerk reaction?
It was a fascinating case study in communication failure. The timing was key. 2016 was before the full weight of the Ukraine invasion was felt, and Germany was still culturally invested in the idea of perpetual European peace.
So the context wasn't there.
The context was missing. When the government released the advice, the public saw it as alarmist, excessive, and frankly fear-mongering. Commentators mocked the idea of being told to hoard canned goods when the only visible threats were economic.
There was no perceived reason for it, so it lacked credibility.
Exactly. That public reaction meant the policy was effectively shelved. It just failed to generate the compliance or the culture of preparedness that the BBK wanted.
That makes the 2025 BBK Guide update so much more significant. It shows they really learned from that PR disaster.
Absolutely. The 2025 guide is the first time in 35 years that they have explicitly and openly anchored this preparation strategy, not just to some generic disaster, but to the unavoidable possibility of war.
Connecting it directly to current events.
Directly to current security analysis. The message now is, we are not making this up. Look at the geopolitical facts. That change in tone is the real headline here. It moved from a suggestion that was easily mocked in 2016 to an accepted necessity in 2025.
So let's get specific. What does the state actually want people to stock to meet that ideal 7 to 10 day target? We're talking about specific numbers, right? Not just buy some extra stuff.
Oh, they lay out very clear parameters, and they emphasize the difference between just having food and having nutritionally sound, long-lasting provisions.
Okay.
The BBK recommends a minimum of 2 liters of water per person per day.
2 liters per person.
Per day. So if you calculate that over 10 days for a family of 4, that's a serious amount of water you need to store.
Yeah, that's a lot. And what about the food? Is it really just about, high-calorie, sugary foods to keep morale up?
The recommendations are far more comprehensive. The guide focuses on shelf stability and nutritional balance. So this includes long-lasting staples like canned vegetables and fruits to make sure necessary vitamins are present.
Smart.
They recommend dry goods like rice, pasta, potatoes, dairy products like long-life milk or powdered milk, and certainly cooking oil. And they also advise having energy sources that don't require cooking, things like hard biscuits or preserved meats in case the power is totally out.
Okay, so that's the individual side of the equation. But the state is also putting a serious financial commitment into its own preparedness. What are they putting into the national emergency stocks? What does strategic reserve actually look like?
This is that dual-track strategy in action. You encourage individual resilience, but at the same time, you shore up the state's ability to intervene. The national emergency stocks are designed to hold readily available, quickly deployable food for large populations if a crisis goes beyond that first self-sufficiency period.
I remember hearing a specific detail about the national stock that really brought the policy down to earth for me.
Yes. They're focusing on what they call ready-to-consume products. News reports, citing internal BBK planning documents, frequently mentions specific tangible items like canned ravioli and dry lentils.
Canned ravioli.
Canned ravioli. The idea is that these are meals that require minimal, if any, preparation. No complex cooking, no sophisticated kitchen equipment. They can sustain a population immediately upon distribution. It's just practical bulk sustenance.
And the financial figure associated with this is just staggering. It really underscores how seriously officials are taking this. We heard estimates around $105 million.
That's correct. Media reports have cited a budget proposal for around $105 million, dedicated specifically to these ready meal reserves for war and severe disaster preparedness. And that money isn't just for buying the ravioli. It goes into the entire logistical architecture needed to make the reserve functional. We're talking about massive warehousing costs, constant monitoring of expiration dates, complex rotation strategies, secure distribution networks.
So it's not just a warehouse full of old food.
Not at all. It's a strategically managed system designed to handle the scale of a national emergency.
Given that financial commitment and the memory of the 2016 backlash, isn't there a risk that by explicitly linking this high-cost preparation to war, they might confuse citizens? Maybe even damage public trust if the $105 million is spent and, nothing happens.
That's a really important question about public messaging and governance. The officials have to walk a fine line. Their argument is that the investment pays off regardless of whether a war breaks out. If a catastrophic cyber attack takes down the national power grid for a week, that reserve is still vital. The $105 million isn't only for war. It's an insurance policy against modern fragility. The war is possible line is simply the highest stakes reason for the preparedness, providing the political justification for the expenditure.
That makes the two core goals clearer. Let's review them. So we have the security and defense goal treating war risk as a real possibility.
Right.
And then the crisis resilience goal, which targets community self-sufficiency against major infrastructure failures, like energy or cyber attacks.
You've captured the duality perfectly. The state recognizes its own limitations here. They are not expecting to immediately feed millions if the lights go out or if supply chains break down all at once.
So the whole system only works if people do their part.
The entire system works only if the majority of families can sustain themselves for that critical first week. It buys valuable time for the central government to execute emergency protocols.
So to achieve this massive behavioral change, to get millions of citizens to actually build and maintain these stocks, the state is trying to foster a real culture of individual preparedness.
Yeah.
They're trying to move past the ridicule of 2016.
They are.
How are they selling this idea to the average shopper?
They're using simple, actionable behavioral advice. They encourage families to make stocking a normal part of shopping, not some kind of panic ritual. The system they promote is called the living stock system.
The living stock system? That sounds much less intimidating than hoarding.
Exactly. And that's the point. It's a behavioral tool designed to prevent the stock from becoming stale or financially intimidating. The system is simple. When you buy a new can of tomatoes, you place it at the back of your reserve.
And you use the oldest one first.
You consume the oldest product first, moving it to the front. This ensures continuous rotation, it minimizes waste, and it turns emergency preparedness into a simple kitchen habit. No different than rotating your spices.
So they're trying to make buying a can of beans for your reserve as boring as buying milk.
As boring and normal as buying milk, yes.
Okay, so let's synthesize the three major takeaways from this deep dive. What does this massive policy shift, spanning from geopolitics all the way down to pantry organization, ultimately mean?
Well, I think the first thing is we are witnessing a complete acknowledged change in the security paradigm.
Right. Making preparation for kinetic or hybrid warfare an explicit necessary policy after 3 decades of focusing on peacetime governance.
That's number one.
Second, this policy is accelerating the crisis prevention culture. It's aligning Germany's enhanced 7 to 10 day target with the broader EU focus, but setting a higher standard because they perceive a higher risk.
A much higher standard. And finally, there's that increased emphasis on dual-track reserves.
So empowering individual households with the living stock system and backing that up with massive, strategically managed state reserves of ready-to-eat meals.
All financed by that significant $105 million budget proposal. This is a robust civil defense architecture. It's not just a friendly recommendation anymore. What's fascinating here is how effectively the state has transitioned this concept. It's moving civil defense from being a symbolic gesture, something you found buried in an outdated guide, to becoming an active financially backed policy that reflects a real and palpable geopolitical possibility.
It's a new reality.
It is. And we focused heavily on the basics, food and water, which were the main concerns of the Cold War. But this new German strategy acknowledges that a modern shock will break entirely different systems.
Things we depend on now that didn't even exist then.
Exactly. And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. We're talking about self-sufficiency during crises like widespread cyberattacks or massive energy cutoffs. Beyond food and water, which are the old challenges, what unexpected modern dependencies would break down first in your own daily life?
Hmm. Think about things that simply didn't exist 35 years ago. The ability to pay for things digitally, the functionality of your cell service and GPS, the highly specialized global supply chain logistics required just for your car to run or for your local hospital to operate.
If society had to rely on radical self-sufficiency for a week, what single modern technology would cease functioning and leave you most exposed? It's worth exploring those concepts of reliance and dependency.
That is a deep dive for another day. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked how canned goods became a essential part of Germany's national security framework. We hope this knowledge helps you stay informed and maybe even encourages you to implement that living stock system yourself.
It's not a bad idea.
Until next time, keep exploring.